Well, I guess I'll start us off. My name is Ralph Moore. I'm with St. Anne Church in Baltimore. We're with the Social Justice Committee, and we've launched an initiative, a letter writing campaign to Pope Francis on behalf of the 6 African-American candidates for sainthood. There are 0 African-Americans from the US who have been canonized in the 400 years we've been associated with the Catholic Church in America. And so we're trying to get the first ones done. So if you've not had a chance to sign a letter, we'll be happy to post the letter in the chat, and you can just sign it, and either copy it and send it to us, or what do you call it? Just send it to us, not by fax, but what's the other way?
Email.
Email, and we'll be happy to forward it. Our plan is to take a batch of the letters, copies of the letters, to Pope Francis or the Dicastery for the Cause of Saints. But I'll talk about that a little bit more, I hope.
Yes.
Bob, if you give me a moment.
We'll get you. And Ralph, on behalf of, again, Pax Christi Metro DC Baltimore Council, you were, certainly for me, you were the one that made me aware of this a little bit more than a year ago. And we appreciate all the good efforts you've been doing. And we're glad to do our little part to try to help the important initiative.
You and Pax Christi have been very helpful to us. We appreciate it.
So while we're going to start in about another minute, if anybody wants to else wants to introduce themselves, who's usually not part of this group.
Hello, my name is Michael Howard, and I'm the husband of Charlene Howard, and I'm glad to be a part of this experience of looking at our saints in the making.
We're always glad to be with you, Michael. So thank you for being here with us. We bring up, we have a opening prayer. Why don't we do that?
A prayer for dismantling racism. Dear God, in our efforts to dismantle racism, we understand that we struggle not merely against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, those institutions and systems that keep racism alive by perpetuating the lie that some members of the family are inferior and others superior. Create in us a new mind and heart that will enable us to see brothers and sisters in the phases of those divided by racial categories. Give us the grace and strength to rid ourselves of racial stereotypes that oppress some of us while providing entitlements to others. Help us to create a church and nation that embraces the hopes and fears of oppressed people of color where we live, as well as all those around the world. Heal us, heal your family, God, and make us one with you, in union with our brother Jesus, and empowered by your Holy Spirit. Amen.
But Charlene, why don't you go ahead if you could unmute yourself, yeah, and go ahead and introduce Donna to us. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlene Howard, and I am a longtime friend of Donna Grimes, who is currently the Assistant Director for African American Catholics at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And in her role, she interacts with Black Catholics all over the country, listening to them regarding their experiences as Catholics in their parishes and dioceses, works for ways for them to be appreciated and regarded in the church, but also to bring together all communities that interact with those of us who are African American and Catholic. She travels a lot, she presents a lot, and she's one of my best buddies. So she's a product of the Catholic school system here in the Diocese of Washington, having graduated from Elizabeth Seton High School and gone on to do many, many wonderful things. So I don't want to take up all of her time because you really came here to listen to her, but I certainly present to some and uplift to others, my sister, Donna Grimes.
Thank you so much, my friend. How's everybody today? Great. I was, this morning, I just wasn't feeling well. I mean, I'm a little bit on the, I had a cold, bad cold. Maybe some of you know about this thing that's running around here. And a lot of people are catching it with a lot of coughing. And that part was okay. That was getting much, much better. But then I just got I was feeling very lightheaded. So I didn't think I could make it, but I'm here and I'm glad to be here with you to share on this subject. I want to say hi to Bishop. I see Bishop Campbell and I see MJ and MJ Park and quite a few friends of Vertel Kenyon. I haven't seen you in a few years. How are you? And wonderful. Okay. So I appreciate the opportunity. Pax Christi, I have a love for Pax Christi. I'm been a longtime member of Pax Christi and an ambassador for peace, honored in that way to be an ambassador for peace. So what I'd like to, but I wanted to share with you about the 6 holy men and women who are on the path to sainthood. You know, we call them saints to be, and we are hopeful that they will be saints in our lifetime. Hopefully, we have been waiting for an African-American saint for forever. We don't have any. But I wanted to start by asking you first, and before I proceed, is there any more introduction you wanted, Bob? Anything else you wanted me to say? By way of introducing the topic or anything?
No, I don't think so, Donna, except for I just want to remind everybody that if you would like to, use the chat if you have any questions or comments, and we'll have some time at the end for people to, verbalize some of that. But also, if you would like to, put your name, email address, and where you're from, if you want to try to stay more in touch with us on this subject. So Donna, thank you very much, and we really appreciate it. We know you're not feeling well at all, but you're really as usual womaning up and coming forth.
God's lifting me lifting me today, and I guess it's because this is an important topic. And sometimes we want to do things in ministry, and then we get attacked in the spiritual realm. So I'm just casting all of that out, and let's just talk about these 6 holy men and women. I am so excited about them. But I wanted to start first with you, from your perspective. Who is your favorite saint? Does anybody on the call here have a saint that they like? Maybe your confirmation saint, maybe another saint that you just have found their life to be a real inspiration to you. And I thought we would start with that. Who would like to share briefly about a saint that they really revere and how that saint may have helped them in their lives?
St. Charles Borromeo, who I'm named after.
Okay, and why St. Charles?
He was a theologian and a figure of the Council of Trent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. How about anybody else? We don't have to go through everybody, but if somebody else has a saint they'd like to share, please.
Donna, I'm a secular Franciscan along with your Uncle Plater. And so I'd have to say Francis and Claire are a powerful inspiration to me.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Mary. You have another, an alias there, but it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Donna Grimes.
Yes.
This is Michael Howard.
Hello.
Another one of your longtime friends.
Oh, yes. Way back.
way back. I will say Sister Thea Bowman, because I met her. I actually saw her. I know she is a real saint, flesh and blood. And she left me with some words of wisdom that I could not appreciate when she told me 30 years ago, 40 years ago, these words. And after reading her material and seeing her story unfold in my life, I can truly appreciate why we are considering her a saint right now because of her lifestyle. And I think that if anybody was to read her story and the racial kickback that she experienced in the formation of becoming a nun, you would have to agree that no one should ever be brutalized with such hatred for Black people, especially if you're in formation for the Catholic Church. I'll stay at that.
Excellent, excellent. Yes. And we'll talk about her life. Who else?
Maria Bayer. I like Maximilian von Kolbe. He is a Catholic priest, German Catholic priest who was in the concentration camp and volunteered to die for another man who had children. And I kind of always picture that kind of generosity or charity to other people. And actually I named my daughter Maxine, which is Maximilia, would be after her. So I really thought.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, one more. How about one more?
Donna, this is Beverly Thornton. How are you?
Hi, Beverly. Well, thank you. Well,
Good.
on
I remember as a child sitting at the feet of Sister Thea Bowman in New Orleans when I went to visit my family during the summer, and she would play the guitar, and my aunt had a bird cage, and we just had our own little thing going, and she just played and played, and she never tired out. I am really looking forward to this.
Well, that's a really good point, Beverly, that the saints are really regular people. They lived whole lives just like we do, They are, so, and even to know a saint, that's amazing. To even know a saint. Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa of Calcutta, used to attend Saint Teresa, our parish, Saint Teresa of Avila Parish.
Okay.
And so people, my senior would say, she used to sit right in that seat, and people remember that. And her sister next door. And but the saints lift our spirits and give us an image of what an image of glory, really, an image of what God appreciates and what God wants us to be. That image of holiness in a very regular, ordinary person. And but yet they go through so much. They go through so much in their lives, and it's inspirational for us. And so that's why I wanted to start with your own favorite saints. We often pick a confirmation saint, a saint for confirmation, a patron saint for ourselves. But there are lots of ways. There are a lot of knowing the lives of the saints is really good. I mean, there's some good books out there about them in general that speak to saints who are for whatever your profession is. Maybe a saint who has the same feast day as your birthday. We did that with our confirmation group to help the young people to find a saint that they really, that was a hero for them. So a lot of our athletes wanted Saint Sebastian because he was an athlete, and that was girls and boys alike. And so, on and on, which is very different from when Charlene and I and Michael would have received confirmation. We were, I remember a list of 10 girls' names and 10 boys' names, and those are the ones you pick. And we learned a little bit about those saints, but there are so many more. And the other wonderful thing in the church today, we're becoming aware of the saints from all various cultures. Some of them are blesseds and venerables, but that means a lot to the community to have a saint from your own tribe, if you will.
Yes.
There's already one Native American saint. We know of Saint Kateri Teckwitha, but there are others on the path to sainthood. And so for us as African American people, we have been very faithful Catholics since the 16th century, 15th century, actually, when you look at when Africans came to these shores in Florida and other parts of what will become the United States of America. But so I wanted to lift that up. And why is an African American saint important? it means a lot to us as Black Catholics that we have been very faithful, as I mentioned, when I was growing up, and many of you will remember this saint too. There was Saint Martin de Porres. He was the only one that we knew that looked a little bit like us. And that tells people that, oh, there's a place for me in this church. You know, you may or may not be aspiring to be a saint, directly aspiring to that, but just the thought that, hey, there are holy men and women that look like me. And it's so affirming and it's so important. It helps to build the faith. And one of the issues we have in the church today is that people from various cultures often feel marginalized and feel that, oh, but this is not a church for me. And yet it's a universal church. Don't we say that being a Catholic means universal, and that we really have people from all over. We have the saints from all over the world, from every culture, every hue, people with saints who have disabilities. We have all kinds of role models for us who are saints. And I think for us, I see Mr. Moore is on the call. Mr. and Ms. Moore are on the call. And in Baltimore, I know, Ralph, you were, you delivered letters to the Vatican saying, come on now, we waited long enough. And actually with St. Martin de Porres, with his cause, he had a very clear cause. People who knew him, who were his contemporaries, spoke of him bilocating. They spoke of all kinds of miracles with him, with animals, and animals that normally wouldn't get along. They're all eating out of the same bowl. Or he told them one time to leave the monastery, leave the food for the brothers, and please don't eat it. Telling the mice to do that. And there's stories of, okay, they agreed to that and walked out. He promised them, I'll feed you in the garden, and they left. And so there are a lot of interesting stories about our saints, and some fall out of they're considered saints for a while, and then they're not anymore, like Saint Christopher. We used to have those Christopher medals, but people still honor Saint Christopher. We still need a saint for travelers. Anyway, to speak about the African-American saints, you know that there are 6 candidates on the path to sainthood. I'm not sure how many of them, I'm glad to hear many people know Sister Thea Bowman, because she is a contemporary of ours. She was alive and breathing the same air that we breathe. But then the others, I want to just briefly speak about each of the other 5. Each of the 6, the other 5. I wanted to start with Pierre Toussaint. Are you all familiar with Pierre Toussaint? Okay, from New York. He's a strong philanthropist. Yes, John. Yes, because we actually refer to him as the father of Catholic Charities. Not that he founded Catholic Charities USA, but his philanthropy was unbelievable. It was just amazing. And despite the fact that he grew up, he was born enslaved in Haiti, and he came with the family that owned him. He came to the United States during around the time of the Haitian Revolution, because the family, he was a part of the family in the sense that he was baptized, and he worked for the family, of course, as a child. And he called his godmother was a child too, pretty much a little girl in the family. But the family loved him, apparently, in a sense of they had some love for him, I'll put it that way. But the issue with Pierre Toussaint was that he was very humble. He was a devoted Catholic. He walked to Mass, and some say that he may have walked to Mass. One reason he walked to Mass was probably because of the segregation on the trains, trolleys in New York. But Pierre Toussaint was very generous. He freed a lot of people. Even he could have purchased his own freedom, but he purchased. And as an adult, what he did, he was a hairdresser. So those who know Pierre Toussaint, he was a hairdresser for the wealthy, and of course he could have been one of those people who just gets into the gossip. But that was not what he did. He used his opportunity, as he did women's hair, and helped them to look beautiful. He talked about his faith. They talked about their faith. And there's a beautiful biography of his life, where he talks about, he shares letters with some of the patrons, his patrons. He was just, it was just one of those things that he was just a very, very humble man. One of the things I noticed that I liked about him too was that he could have purchased his own freedom, which is, this is a sticking point for some people to say, well, why would you canonize a saint who is so, we say self-effacing, but no, but look at his spirituality. He always wanted to make sure that he carried his catechism with him. He was a daily mass attender and received the Eucharist every day. And as I said, he walked to the church. And there's more about his life too. One of the resources I want to share, because you'll find it helpful for all of these 6 candidates, is a book by Michael Heinlein. It's a very small book, Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood. No, can't show. There, that's it. Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood. And what I like about this particular resource is that it gives a little biographical information, but more than that, it really looks at the spirituality of each of the candidates. And what are their charisms, the spiritual charism. And also it challenges some of the questions that people have about, well, why would you canonize this person? What was so good about what they did? And what was so virtuous about them? And I find it very easy to read. But anyway, that's a very good resource for all of them. And Pierre Toussaint, one of the fruits of his work is the Pierre Toussaint Scholarship Foundation Fund that operates very well in New York. The Archdiocese, you may know that he's buried in St. Patrick's Cathedral, right? Yes, okay. The only layperson is buried there. And that says a lot. One of the reasons is because he helped to get parishes started in New York at that time. He put a lot of his money into the church, he hired young men and taught them various trades and helped them to get job skills. He purchased people out of freedom, including his niece, his wife, his niece, and just gave a lot of money, a lot of good money. Thank you, Michael. Michael put the title in the and publication information in the chat. So it's a good easy read. But so that's, I was going to say, so Pierre Toussaint, the Pierre Toussaint Fund gives scholarships to young people, and not just Black students, but for college, but all kinds. I went to their gala this year, and I was just impressed, very impressed with the work that fund is doing to continue to perpetuate the name and lift up the cause, and to draw more support for the cause of canonizing Pierre Toussaint. The young people there, they receive a scholarship, and to do that, they must be Catholic, and they must be recommended by their pastor. So that means they're anchored in the church somewhere. Okay, they're not just receiving a scholarship because they did a great essay. No, they've got to, and then they do service. So that's Pierre Toussaint. And I'm trying to do them kind of in the order in which their causes were raised as well. We also have Mother Henriette DeLille from Louisiana, who is accredited with founding the, Bob. It's accredited with founding the Holy Family Sisters, but she really was one of these women who, she wanted to be very holy herself, chaste and holy herself. The system in Louisiana, where people really had to, a lot of women who were considered mulatto or, mixed Black and white, they had opportunity to better themselves in society, to at least have a home and have a family if they were mistresses of wealthy men. And she didn't want to do that. She didn't feel that God was calling her to that. One thing I like about Mother Henriette, in addition to founding the Holy Family Sisters, she had a Holy Family Association, which really which recognized the virtue of the family. At that time in the 19th century, it was just very difficult. And with with the whole slave sister situation, you had people who could not marry and she valued marriage, and she wanted to make sure that people received their sacraments. So she was a sponsor for confirmation. She was a godmother for baptisms, and just wanted to make sure that the people in the community were receiving their sacraments, and also we're living a good holy life. What Bob asked a question in the chat about, and maybe I'll just catch questions as they go. Bob asked a question in the chat about what is the USCCB doing, and USCCB, I'm very pleased to say the conference is really, it's often, I mean, the word is getting out now in a lot of respects about these 6 candidates. We do, at one time, we've closed our store, but we had prayer cards and we were, really were promoting their causes. But even more than that, there's a recent statement that was written in the, for Dr. King's holiday. Our Justice, Peace, and Human Development staff, they come out with important statements at different times of the year, like for Labor Day. And so for Dr. King, the statement is that I read a draft of, and I think it's being tweaked a little bit, but you should see it pretty soon. Excuse me, you'll see a press release where they say, here's the statement from the U.S. Catholic bishops for the Martin Luther King holiday. And I'd like to share that with you. In fact, I can get you send it to you all afterwards once it's really been published. But what I wanted to, the theme of this particular message is a brief message, but it comes from Sister Thea Bowman herself. People keep saying, where's the next Martin Luther King? We're all called, I think. We're called by our citizenship, by our membership in the human race. We're all called to free ourselves and to free one another. And Sister Thea Bowman spoke to the bishops back in 1989. And some of my colleagues will say that was one of her first miracles, was that she got the bishops to sing, to stand together and to lock arms and to sing. And often at those meetings, the bishops' meetings, lay people don't speak, but she really got them moving. And some were crying, so she spoke with them honestly. And so we say that, that was maybe her first miracle. But the letter from the conference also, speaks about Martin Luther King, of course, and on his birthday and recognizing him. But the fact that Pope Benedict XVI recently passed, they were able to capture some of his words and incorporate those words into this statement about Dr. King. And so, and they lift up the causes of the 6 candidates for sainthood. We have 3 venerable and 3 servants of God. I say, here's what Pope Benedict said: to renew the church in every age, God raises up saints who themselves have been renewed by God and are in constant contact with God. And so the conference is actively pursuing that. And consequently, the message is that message is picked up in dioceses and parishes around the country, in some cases through the Office of Black Catholics and ethnic ministries, but not exclusively. And I find more and more people are really touched by the various things. Sister Thea is a favorite. I'll save her for a little bit, but I wanted to share a little bit about Mother Mary Lang. Mother Mary Lang is in our area. She is, she's the founder of the Oblate Sisters of Providence. Here's another word. It's interesting too. Both Mother Mary Lang and Pierre Toussaint come from that same part of the country, around Haiti, Cuba, in the Caribbean. And so Mother Lang, she went through so much too, as a sister, trying to form consciously form a group of religious women, consecrated religious women. And I mean, I don't know if you ever read about her life, read her story. And I saw one woman play about her. It's just fascinating how hard the sisters had to work, how impoverished they were, because they were trying to, it started with just 3, with the 3 sisters, 3 women. They were reviled for trying to wear a habit, because think about it. We're talking about the 19th century. We're talking about a time when African-American women were mostly domestics and laundresses, and and many people thought that they had low morals. So both Henriette and Mother Mary Lang, wanted to elevate the status of Black. I wanted to recognize and respect the status of African American women, and to say we are worthy of respect as well. People would see these sisters, the Oblates, in their habits and very simple habits that they wore, and would spit on them, would push them out. It was hard for them to receive Mass and receive the Eucharist and attend Mass. They had to work as domestics for the university, for St. Mary's. So it's like, it was really an uphill battle. But they have a school, St. Francis Academy, which is still around. And in Baltimore, good old Baltimore, they have the Mother Lang School, middle school, elementary school, right? I haven't been there, but I've heard great things about it. A beautiful new facility. And so Baltimore is really, really on the map there. Oh, so many things in here. Yes. And both Mother Lang and Henriette DeLille taught young people to read, taught the children to read and write, which is okay. Realize, that's against the law, right? And it was not really approved, but they did that. And with Henriette DeLille, she accepted enslaved as well as free children. Okay. Then we have good old Father Augustus Tolton. I don't have a favorite, but I like good old Father Gus, right? Augustus Tolton. He was the first recognized African-American priest. He couldn't be ordained in the United States. No seminary would accept him for training, not one. Many, many letters went out. He had some benefactors who really recognized his holiness as a young man. He also was born into slavery, and his mother took him, his sister, and his brother to across the river, even though she couldn't swim, and she had half an oar. She paddled them across to the Free State. Okay, so but Tolton, you may have seen. Has anybody here seen the play about Father Tolton? There's a play that was in the DC area about his life, and that play is still available if you're interested. In the Archdiocese of Washington, there were some showings a couple of years ago, I forget, pre-COVID, but Father Augustus Tolton had to be ordained in Rome. And so when you see him, often you see him with the biretta, I think it is, and you see the red. That red means he was a red like tassel means he was ordained in Rome. It had to be. I mean, it says a lot. He hoped to be a missionary in Africa. He thought that's where he would be assigned. But they said, no, we think you should go back to your own country and evangelize there and serve there. And he did. He was a tremendous homilist. People loved him. I mean, people just loved him. And it made for some jealousy among other priests that he could just bring in people because he was he spoke from the heart. He spoke in ways that reached people. And there was resentment about that. People tried to get him out of there, they went to the bishop about it, and he wasn't bringing people in. They came, they heard the word. We say the word will draw you, word of God will draw you. And that good message brought them in. I'm skipping through a little bit because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, and I do want to get to some of your questions too. Yes, he did. He died of heat stroke at the age of 43, coming back from a priest's retreat. And that was interesting too, because many there's some African American priests who came after Father Tolton who were never invited to a priest retreat. I mean, and I'm talking about in the 60s and 70s. Things have changed a lot now, but we have that situation where many priests were just very isolated. Let me see. And died of heat stroke, yeah. Oh, very good. And so you all can read these things. I hope you'll save the chat, and then because there are references to a lot of other good books as well. some nice books from Liguori Press. In fact, the ones I was holding up for you, this is a series from Liguori Press, where you can do an hour with the candidate for sainthood. And it talks about their life, and you're praying with them, if you will. And it just helps to bring you closer to them. Let's see, Sister Thea. And then Julia Greeley is the last one. Let me talk about Julia Greeley first. Julia Greeley out of Denver. She was born into slavery. She was blinded by her owner. He inadvertently, in anger, he used a whip, and it blinded her. But she's considered the founder of St. Vincent de Paul, if you will, meeting the needs, the emergency needs. She didn't found the organization, of course, but she helped to meet the emergency needs of people living in the Denver area. She had a special, and she was very humble too, but had a special love for the people of the community who were impoverished. And she would travel around the city with her little red wagon at night. And the reason she did that was because she was bringing food, maybe a bag of potatoes, or bringing clothing to people, often white families that were poor, so that they would not be shamed or embarrassed to ask for charity. She brought it and left it at night, left them on their doorsteps. She had a relationship with the fire department, and they kind of watched out for her. She had a special devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And when she passed, they said several thousand, 2,000-3,000 people came to her funeral. They had the church was open, and people would come, and you know how you have a wake or you have people viewing the body. Many people came to that. Now, lastly, I just touch on Sister Thea Bowman. Sister Thea, to me, I distinguish her from the others in that she's somebody we can relate to today. We have to all, with the other saints, we have to consider the circumstances they lived in, where there were strong restrictions. And so if they were able to study their faith, to live their faith, they had to endure a lot of the issues of the country that were prevailing at the time. Segregation, a lot of discrimination, a lot of it's amazing that Sister Thea was accepted by her community, her community of sisters, that she was accepted to become a part of that community. She was the only one. And there are stories of her that because she was in Mississippi, what else can I say? Mississippi, wow, right? She couldn't sleep in the same quarters with the other sisters. She couldn't eat with the same sisters. There were times that she did eat, but then when it was time to go to bed, she had to walk down her lonely corridor into a whole different building for her to be able to sleep. And now what does that say about community? So she's a tremendous teacher and writer, singer, we know that, but she's very, very spiritual. And the thing that she did, she connected with Black Catholic spirituality and helped people to see it's really a thing. There is a spirituality that comes from the community itself, as with every culture, okay? And so I like her, she's not one that you would say, oh, that you would say, oh, she was meek and mild. She was not. She spoke very strongly about who we are and how God made us, and not boastfully, but to say this is how God designed his people. Just as God designed others from other cultures, he designed us this way. And there's a spirituality that we all experience. And so I think the strength for Sister Thea, yes, a lot of people knew her and they witnessed her and they've been changed by her. Many priests have been formed by her. Father Maurice Nutt, Father Manuel Williams, there's just so many from around the country who sat at her feet when she's one of the founders of the Institute for Black Catholic Studies, which is one of the treasures of the Catholic Church. And anybody can go, and it's a wonderful experience to be able to go and just to learn more about Black Catholic spirituality? How do we express ourselves? How do we, what is, we're learning and teaching that all as we go. So before I go further, I want to stop and ask if anybody has questions or has any thoughts about any of these 6 candidates.
Hello? One of the thoughts I have with Father Augustus Tolton and his dying, he was on a train for a period of time, and then when he got off, he died of heat stroke. But with all of these candidates for sainthood, in addition to trying to recruit people to their cause and to their efforts, that was to become, a religious or to raise money, is that it was stressful. The stress of being in a church that professes that God loves everybody equally, and yet you can't join our seminary, you can't be ordained here, you can't join our convent. All of those kind of things had to be stressful in terms of trying to reconcile within oneself that it's not true. That you're in a church that you love and with preaches from the gospel, but which lives the lie that everybody is equal and everybody deserves to be treated equally. But I'm just struck by the stress of what they must have endured of having to deal with that duality, that contradiction and all. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think every one of them had that to do with the double-mindedness, your double consciousness. You're aware of what the Bible says one thing, your experience, your spirituality, the life of Jesus says one thing, and yet the reality is the complete opposite. Absolutely, it was very stressful. The Oblate Sisters of Providence were really living on the edge of poverty. I mean, very hungry, because what could they do? They were hungry. They had to work cleaning the bathrooms and the rooms of students at the university to be able to make ends meet. And if it wasn't for their Father Joubert, who would come and give them communion, they were almost excommunicated just for trying to live a holy life. The same with, and each of them is the same thing. I think that stress is really, that's a major factor. And the other thing is, we understand how hard, well, maybe I don't know if you're aware how expensive it is to go through the process of canonization. Now, some saints have just zipped on through on a fast track. And I'm not saying they're not worthy, but you have Mother Teresa. She hadn't been dead. She wasn't dead very long before she was canonized. Then you have the popes, Paul VI, you have John the 23rd. John Paul II, of course. He's a good example. You had a whole cult, what we call the cult of saints. You had the community rising up to say this person, clamoring for him to be a saint. And that's the thing with that's the reason why it's so important to not just to make the causes known, but also to have people clamoring for sainthood, saying that these people should be canonized,
Right.
An individual. Now, the other issue, so there's a lot of money involved. There's always the question of the miracles. What is considered a miracle? I jokingly said Sister Thea performed a miracle with the bishops, but it goes back to Ralph's point that, she broke some barriers there. But besides the expense of it, the time that's involved, the miracles that are worked, I understand, sometimes we will say that people are praying for all 6 at the same time, and that's great. But the process requires a way of saying, this miracle came to me, and it doesn't have to be a healing. It could be, there are a number of miracles. It came to me because I prayed to this person, this holy, venerable or servant of God, for this particular favor, and God answered it. I see some hands up. I see Bob, Maria, Michael, and maybe some others. I don't know if I'm getting in the right order, but okay. Bob, how about you? Bob Moore? No.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I want Maria to say something, but I also then want to go back. Ralph was saying a little bit more about what St. Anne's is doing, and that we can get involved with. So I also, if anybody else has anything. So Maria, why don't you go ahead and
Yeah, my question is about the miracle expectation or the happening of a miracle. I mean, the way, I wonder what kind of fairness is there applied or has to be applied. And so I'm very confused about the process, because if we don't, do we have to have that proof of a miracle or what else before we just say, somebody has to become a saint? Did any miracles really happen for Mother Teresa or for the Pope? And if not, then why do the 6 saints we are talking here about need to have miracles? I don't know. I'm not aware that there's any great miracle that is associated to Mother Teresa, because I know I grew up in this kind of background when I was raised. We talked about saints all the time. They were, so it was kind of like a certain process. Anyway, so that's my question. Is there some fairness that needs to be applied? Do we depend on these miracles?
Maria, I think you raise a really good question. And I'm thinking about Father Augustus Tolton. Bishop Joseph Perry from Chicago is his postulator, right? And he's been following this for years. But every once in a while, recently I've heard him say a certain miracle. So, what was considered to be a miracle was disproved, or it didn't measure up. I think there's some politics involved. I don't know exactly. And I shouldn't say, well, I'm going to say what I believe. There's, that some people, as I said, are on a fast track. But then for others, it's like, well, this is not really credible. I mean, there's the medical, especially with healings, you bring in doctors and scientists, and, there's just so much there. But you have young people who are people being proposed for sainthood today, where it's not clear what the miracle was. Maybe there's something extraordinary that happened in their lives. The body is still preserved or something, but I don't know. I just think a lot of it is supposed to be about the holiness of that person and how that person leads us to God, how that person is as a role model for us. I can't answer that question definitively, but I do think that it's a very difficult process. Even with I was going to just tell you, with Martin de Porres, when he was canonized, his paperwork was lost and they had to recover it. And I mean, for some of them, if they are like for Pierre Toussaint, the ones who were who were born out of this country, they've got to get information from Haiti, from wherever they, Baltimore and on and on. So from different places. With Sister Thea, fortunately, she's more current. There's a lot of good information about her that's right there. But then in terms of the miracles, I'm going to ask anybody on the call. Bishop Campbell, are you still on the call? I guess.
I am on the call.
Thank you. Could you speak a little bit more about the about the miracles? Did you hear the question that was posed about the miracles?
Well, first of all, the miracles, as you said, Donna, it has to be attributed to one person on the road to sainthood. Not we tend to want to pray to everyone that we think can help us, but to show that the intercession of that person on the road to sainthood is the deciding factor in what is considered a miracle, we need to pray to one person specifically for that. And the church determines through, as you said, through doctors or whomever, if it's a medical miracle, as to whether it meets the criteria of the church. And that is what advances a person from the servant of God to venerable, to blessed, and then of course the sainthood. Anywhere along the line, the Pope can do as he chooses. But this Pope has said that he chooses to have everyone on the road to canonization to follow the process that we have in the church. And along with these 6 candidates, there are at least 110 more in the United States on the road to sainthood that are following the same process. And there's a lot more involved besides getting the miracles and getting them recognized by the church. It's also how they're presented, who is representing that candidate, the postulator from their home country, the postulator that is in Rome, and so that no saint has a miracle that is just sitting there languishing because it can't be presented to the dicastery for the cause of saints. So, and unfortunately, in this world, things take money, and that is a big issue too. And sometimes those who seem to be on, as you say, the fast track is because all of these other parts, in addition to the miracles, are there, whereas maybe they're not quite there for our 6 candidates to sainthood. And each of them is on a path for that they have been on from the start of their cause to now. And what they need is that help in all areas, especially our prayers to them for their intercession and to make them known everywhere in our country so that others can do the same, not just during November, the Black Catholic History Month, but continuously year long to help their causes.
Excellent. Yes. And, to support the guilds. That's another thing that we can do as individuals, as a parish, is to support the guild of those individual candidates for sainthood, just to send donations, to talk about their lives. We have programs in the Archdiocese of Washington where we have ambassadors that speak, that really are lifting up those individual causes. And, that's one way to make their causes known better. And to also, help people to see, to really study their lives, and as well as Bishop Campbell was saying, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but to recognize that there is a whole process there. And the process seems very complicated to me. I mean, the steps that are taken. And so.
Just for the record, though, there is a process, but there've always been exceptions to the process. There've always been dispensing of miracles for various people, including Pope St. John Paul II.
Right.
There was a dispensing of the time to investigate people's lives. Mother Teresa was supposed to wait 5 years like everyone else, and they started after 2 or 3 years with her. And the money is just, she happened to have in her account at the Vatican $100 million, I understand. So there are exceptions, and we're saying, we at St. Anne in particular, and the people who support us, like the Pax Christi folks, we're saying that representation is important, that we've been faithful to the church for 400 years through slavery, through segregation, through mass incarceration and mass poverty, and yet none of us have ever been canonized. And that's embarrassing at best, really. And it just blows our mind that can happen, and so we want to know, how can the bishops help us, the bishops conference? Because one of the last times we heard from the head of the bishops conference last year, Archbishop Gomez, he really criticized the Black Lives Matter movement, and he probably had a disagreement with the organization as opposed to the movement, but he had a lot of negative and disparaging things to say about the Black Lives Matter movement. We need the Catholic Church to make a simple, positive statement that you can't be a good Catholic and a white supremacist at the same time.
Yes.
We could no longer tolerate it. And we need some absolutely clear statements of that, especially in this time when people are coming after not just Black Catholics, but Black and brown and other people of color. We need them to stand
Well
up
said.
for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Ralph. I know we had Dolores, we had Michael. Michael?
Yes, so much has been said. It just reminds me of, I'm asking the question, how was I catechized? Because I don't remember none of this when I was a little boy coming up, knowing just exactly how somebody became a saint. They just were a saint. I accepted it, and that was it. Did I see their miracle? No. Have I seen a miracle in my life after praying to St. Michael? Well, maybe so, but maybe I don't know, you know. So all this makes me feel like, well, how was I catechized? And so I come into you, since you talked about your confirmation group. How do you help your confirmandings in the catechist position that you're in understand this process of canonization with the saints? Because I can see some young person saying, are we paying for saints to be saints?
I know. Yeah, we focused on it from that whole idea of the spirituality of that person and that holiness. How would they, how does this person inspire you to be a better person, to be a better Christian, to be a better Catholic, to live a life that's close, a life of holiness? We don't want to push them out of the church talking about these matters that we're talking about right now. But at one time people were paying for indulgences, right? To get into heaven. They're paying.
Well,
This is a human institution, but blessed by God, of course. It is the church is Mother Church. Divine, but also fraught with the problems of human beings. And so I do feel that these 6 candidates, it's just amazing to me that, each one of them had a lot of prejudice and discrimination, a lot of harshness in their lives to overcome, a lot of physical and spiritual and psychological challenges to deal with, and yet continue to push on. But there are people who lived among us whose names have never been elevated. There are priests, as I mentioned, who never were invited to a priest seminar. There are women religious who were not respected in the community, who joined a community, but then were very, very isolated. There's just so much that African Americans have dealt with as Catholics. And then the fact that within our culture in the United States, when we think about the Black church, they think, it's AME, it's Baptist. So we're almost a minority within a minority. Even though I don't use that word minority, but you know what I mean, within a minority, it's unfortunate. I think Dolores also.
I made a list of things. First, before I begin, I want to say I acknowledge that you are not feeling well, and it pains me that I know you are not feeling well. So I will pray to the 6th that you are healed very soon.
I take all the help I can get. Thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to say are all welcomed here. Are all welcomed here. I would ask our Catholic Church, am I welcomed here? Everything that we've discussed says maybe we're not welcomed here. You love a church that pushes you away. We can justify everything, but we can't. What is a miracle? That these orders have existed all of these years when the church didn't even want you here? That the Oblate Sisters went to Lexington Market to beg for food for their congregation and their community, and the food was thrown to them on the streets? Are all welcomed here? I'm not certain that we understand what a miracle is, that
Right.
they have survived, that we continue to support this church that clearly shows no love for us, that our gifts are not welcomed by, I heard you say the mother church, but this is a father's church. Mothers are not welcomed here except to produce more babies, more Catholic babies. And the
Right.
young people are not welcomed here because, you know, these kids are asking us questions
Yes.
and we're giving them these pre-packaged answers that don't answer their questions. It's a farce and you can't fool a kid. They just walk away and they're not coming back. And how long are we going to say, I'm sorry, I'm on a soapbox, I'm passionate like this, but
No.
the AMEs are African Americans that were not accepted in the Methodist Church or did not feel comfortable in the Methodist Church. Are we going to have Catholics, AC Catholics, AA Catholics, African Americans that don't feel accepted in the Catholic Church? We have to stop this foolishness. Why
Absolutely.
would somebody who's struggling to survive give you $1 million to have you recognize a person as a saint who's obviously a saint, when you can use that $1 million to do your ministry and to continue your ministry? We got to stop the foolishness. And my last thing, and I know I said this to Bishop Campbell, I don't pray in isolation. I don't know anyone who prays in isolation. I don't care if you're praying to one saint or one candidate, you're praying to Jesus as well. You're praying to Mary, you're praying to God. How can you isolate where your miracle came from?
Right.
That's
Oh
a
my
farce.
goodness. Preach, sister, preach. You are right on time. Absolutely. I mean, and the thing about being authentic, if we're looking to grow, the church we want to continue. As you know, as church, we need to reach out and be able to draw in young people. And we can't say, come back to church, you know, come back to what? You know, we have to make sure that it's a welcoming environment where they really are welcome. And a lot of our young people today, millennials and Gen Z, they're looking at what we say, like all kids do. Does what we say match what we do? You know, you say come here and all are welcome, but you don't like my friends because they're non-binary or whatever it might be. You know, and yet exceptions are made across the board in a lot of different areas. I mean, this is a challenge of working within the church. But I think that I do think my feeling is very much along the same lines as yours, that each of these 6, and there's so many more, but each of these 6 have led holy lives that are worth venerating and worth studying, so that we can look at their spirituality and say, you know, I can relate to that. This is helping me to see what God is calling me to do, whom God is forming me to be. And it's just important. Let me see. Yes. Thank you, Michael. Dr. Ansel Augustine's book, Leveling the Praying Field, tremendous book. Can the church we love that doesn't love the church we love, what is it, Michael? That doesn't love us back or something?
Yeah. Can the church we love us back?
Love us back. Exactly. I've read that. It's a small book, but it's a powerful book. And Ansel was a youth minister. Here's a young man in his early 40s. Which it's rare in our church these days to find young people working in the church who are, and I say young, I mean, because most of us are in our 50s, 60s, et cetera, et cetera.
Used to be.
Used to be, but we started young, and we started in ministry as young people often ourselves, as young adults. And so anyway, but he was a youth minister and a young adult minister. And he talks about the experiences that he had that really illustrate the points that Dolores was making. Do we really belong? Do we really mean all belong? And the church we've got to stop as a Catholic church of saying, we have we're a white Catholic church. This is the way to worship. This is the way to express ourselves. These are the saints, and Hispanic, ministry to Hispanic Catholics. So that's where the diversity comes in. There's a real willingness to reach out to Hispanic Catholics. Is that because of the numbers? Is that because it's easier? You know, but there are the other communities. I work in the Secretariat of Cultural Diversity, and there are other communities that are also saying, hey, we're here too, and we are just as Catholic as the rest of you. And I think about the API community, very strong. If you think, but when people think of Catholics, what do they think? What's the image in their minds? They forget about the rest of us, and not just forget, but then the resources don't come to us to do ministry that we need to do, to have strong catechetical programs, strong evangelization programs that meet the needs of families and couples, you know, so that we have strong families. The money is just not there. So what we're talking about in terms of the money required for canonization, that's the other side of that coin of money for ministry as well.
One of the things that's very clear, and I don't want to hog, but one of the things that's very clear is that we're not going to get young people to come into the church as we did and our parents and grandparents did, and they see no representation of anybody that looks like them. The typical Catholic church is all white in all the representations, with an occasional statue of Martin de Porres, but that's not in many churches. And that's off-putting to the young people. It's off-putting to us. We tried to deal with it and started dealing with it 50 years ago. We're urging the white Catholics to diversify the images in their churches. We have the portraits of each of the 6 African-American candidates for sainthood at St. Anne Church. They're 2 feet by 3 feet. We've encouraged people, and they've done it in other churches here in Baltimore. They've put up the same pictures to begin to create an atmosphere that's diverse, and to say that you know, we can represent ourselves, and we should have the representation that God loves everybody equally. Now, let me just say very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, our next effort with our initiative, our letter writing campaign, is that we're going to hand deliver them to Pope Francis in Rome. And so we're in the process now of raising money to take the trip to Rome and to deliver them to both the Pope and to the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints. So that's our intention, and we're raising money now. If anyone wants to help us, my name and address and phone number are in the chat box, and we would appreciate your help, you know, to do this. We have mailed over 3,000 letters to Pope Francis, and we've sent letters to the Pope's ambassador in Washington, D.C., who's Archbishop Christopher Pierre. And you know, we would want a much clearer and stronger and direct statement of support and acceptance from them, and we haven't quite gotten it yet. So that's our initiative. Members of our committee are intending to go to Rome, and we've been raising money, and we could use some help if you want. If you don't, if you put off by this, I apologize, but that's what we're doing. That's our next step. So,
well, you know, this is a benefit to the whole church. The whole mainstream broad church, universal church, is enhanced by will be enhanced by these elevation of these individuals to sainthood. Just as we have saints from all over the world, you know, to say it just adds a lot. It adds a lot of value, and it's not just for Black Catholics. Excuse me, it's not just for Black. It's for all of us. Somebody else. Let me see. Bob Cooke.
Yeah, I just want to say again, Donna, you've been great, and I know we know you don't feel well, but you've done a great job, and I just want to thank everybody who joined us. We had, and just to let you know, we're going to try to stop at noon, and some people have other things to do. We can keep on going, a little bit, longer if anybody's got some last remarks to make, but I know some people are probably going to have to get off the call now. I do again want to thank everybody for being here. I see that Mary Sewell put in the chat Ralph Moore's address, so if anybody wants to send a check to help get some of the folks from St. Anne's over to Rome to raise us up. I think you could use that address. So I guess this is, if anybody's got some last comments, please, some quick comments. Otherwise, I know I need to drop off the call. So.
Yes, I do have a comment that Charlie and I, we were asked by Johnny to write some reflections for the Lenten book that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. And I actually took time out and prayed with each one of those saints so that on Sunday's gospel during the Lenten season, everybody will have a chance to, look at the gospels and look at the life of these 6 saints that are on the road of sainthood. So I would just encourage everyone to get one of those books and not just hold on to it, but to distribute it. Talk about Christi, and you by distributing those books, you will also be sharing more prayerful experiences with those 6 saints that are on the road to sainthood. That's number one. Number two, Donna, I think you did a great job. I thank you for your words, but the last few words were exceptional. This is not a Black thing. Please don't walk away from, this conversation as, oh, this is a Black thing that we're doing here. It's not. If it's a Black thing, it's a Hispanic thing as well, because we got some Hispanic blood in our lives as well. We've got some Native American blood in us as well. We've got some African blood as well. We got some Irish blood. This is not just a Black thing. If you walk away from this meeting as being a Black thing, you miss the whole point of our conversation, or Donna's conversation. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Donna's conversation, because I truly believe that this is a universal cosmic spirituality that we're trying to image as being Catholic in the Catholic Church. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And thank you all. I wish I had, well, anyway, I'm so glad to be with you. And I really applaud the work that St. Anne's is doing. I know there were some people who said, why are you pushing for all the saints? And what are you going to, we have to make some noise. That's the way it's going to happen. That's, it has to, the whole movement, has to be lifted up. And I think if we have a template for the letter, somebody asked for that template, that would be helpful to have people, to encourage people to write, to join your effort by writing their own letters, to speak about from whatever perspective they would like, the need for an African-American saint, the need for the recognition of the holy lives of these men and women, and the value to the church. And if we're going to, one of the things we find that the church is growing in areas where there's a multicultural experience. It can be messy at times, it can be difficult and challenging, but that's where the church is growing. Many people, when they can go to a parish, they go to the parish of their choice, and they may jump across 3 to 5 other parishes to get to the one that they like. And the parishes where the faith is growing a lot is often a multicultural parish, where people do feel welcome, where they can see, and then you think about what we want to pass on to our children. We don't want them to have to carry this old baggage that we've been carrying for generations before them. That is not their experience. They're already in a diverse setting in school and in clubs and things like that. And so why not in church as well? So the Catholic Church did not split off the way the Protestant churches did, to have a separate Black and separate white Catholic Church. But in effect, that is what has happened. And that's a topic for another conversation. But we had, that's the reality. We didn't do it. We didn't officially do it, but we did do it. What do you call it? De jure. That's what happened. Where people were sort of relegated to the back, and it's affected people. I know. I will never forget a young man who told me he was an altar server in Ohio, and he had to stand outside in the outside in the snow to hold the paten so that the Black parishioners could receive communion after everybody else outside in the snow in Ohio. Come on now. But we say that all are welcome, only up to a point. and so what did that do to him? You know, you as a child, you see these things, you say, this is not right. This is not right. But then what do you do? And in some ways that you feel complicit. I'm helping to perpetuate an injustice, right? So I mean, it's worth talking about further. It's really worth looking at this even a little further. But thank you all so much. And if those have to leave, I'm available if anybody has questions and would like to ask anything more. But I understand that you all may have to sign off, and we're past 12 or so.
A very interesting discussion, Donna, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your prayers. I appreciate that. Good to see everybody. Marie Barry, haven't seen you in ages.
Well, thanks so much, Donna, and everybody for attending. We're so pleased to have all of you with us and all the good work you're doing, Donna.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So goodbye, everybody.
Bye, all.
Bye. Thanks, Donna.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Feel better. Hot tea.
Thank you.
And rest.
And honey. Put some honey in it.
That's what I need. Rest. Yes. Oh.
Absolutely.